All right, so we're going to pick up here um, in this warring period between really the nationalists who were being controlled by Chiang Kai-shek and the communists who were being controlled by Mao Zedong, or maybe Mao controlled a small group. Mao was convinced that it was the peasants who were going to end up controlling China, that he wanted to ally himself with the peasants. And at that point, about 80% of China were peasants. They were farmers. They lived in the countryside. They lived a traditional life with no modern things. China had a large population at the period. And Mao said, "These are my people. We're not going to worry about the cities. Let's go to the countryside." Um, well, we're going to take a look here at this map, and we're going to see that this was a communist base, and these areas here were all communist bases, okay? And in the big cities along the coastal regions, where the nationalists controlled, but they didn't have control here. So Chiang Kai-shek is going to launch attacks one by one at these communist areas, and one by one, they're going to start what's called the Long March. The Long March is a 6,000-mile march by 90,000 troops, of which only 9,000 would survive, communist troops, out of the south and into this last remaining base, which the nationalists could not break through. This was many of these people died. There was an old story I'd heard about how they were eating their belts for the leather, cowhide. Great suffering. But they make it there. And Mao Zedong is seen as a hero for at least bringing some people to this base and solidifying it. And Chiang Kai-shek realizes, you know what, I'm going to now focus on unifying the majority of China. So he says he's going to follow the vision of Sun Yat-sen, who had said he was going to create a republic government, but maybe he wasn't. Sun Yat-sen is a colorful character. Gosh, I wish I had a regular semester. We talk about him in a regular class before this. So Sun Yat-sen, by the way, a republic government is a representative democracy. That's what we have in our country. And he starts to prepare the people for a democratic constitutional government. But he also sees that the huge difference between the cities on the coast, very European influenced, and the countryside, very poor rural people with no modernities, was going to be a problem. But instead of trying to help these people, the peasants, he says we need to industrialize like Europe did. We're going to start copying the European model. He saw that Japan had copied the European model, had been extremely successful in doing so, had become very powerful. Really, actually, it was the US model that the Japanese copied the most. And this was a mistake. You'll see why. In the cities, he was successful at creating a similar society to the Western nations. They already had a lot of Western culture. The Europeans had been influential there, had been trading and setting up cities. But he just couldn't fix the countryside. He couldn't bring them out of that intense poverty. So he tries to focus on old Chinese values, but it's not going to work. Spoiler alert. He also is being attacked by Japan. We talked about needing more land because they didn't have the natural resources in their land, being the most powerful Asian country at that point. And Chiang is going to have a hard time trying to balance this, building the cities and industrializing and trying to keep up with Japan's military, trying to find a way to keep the peasants happy without redistributing land, because that would go against your Western friends. And we're going to find that this is going to be his downfall during and then definitely after World War II.